Whenever you're playing a war game, you're going to need lots of terrain, and there's loads of great options out there these days, but something that I feel is really missing is the fun and joy that comes from making your own, as was described in books like this. Books like this were awesome. They gave you loads of inspiration, some cool ideas, and things like this would appear inside rulebooks at the time as well. And even Games Workshops would run classes where they teach you how to make some scenery out of bits and pieces that you brought in. Now, I've got loads of happy memories of doing this kind of thing when I was a kid, and even spending rainy Sundays with my dad just making scenery out of bits and pieces around the house. And I think it's a bit of a shame really that you don't see quite so much of this anymore. So in this video, we're going to have some fun making a custom piece of scenery just using some everyday bits and pieces that we find around the studio. So let's get to the desk and see what we can make. So first of all, we need a plan, and for this I really wanted to go for the classic thing here of using a can as the main part of the scenery, as if it's some sort of fuel refinery or something like that. So what I've got are some Coca-Cola cans. I've got 2 of these. Of course, other brands are available, but any can like this will be absolutely fine. I have, of course, made sure they're thoroughly washed before starting to do any of this. Now, in addition, I had a look around and I found in my bits box some pieces that I picked up from a hardware store last time I was in one of these, and that is these little corner elbow joint things here for pipes. These are 1.5 centimeters in diameter, in case you're wondering the sort of size I'm going for here. But these are nice and cheap. When I saw them, I knew they'd come in handy one day, so I picked up a few. I've got 3. We'll use them on the scenery here as well, just to add a bit of interest on there. In addition, other core things I've got are a block of polystyrene right here. This was from some furniture packaging. Everyone I know, I always ask them, whenever you get some new furniture, can I have the polystyrene spare from it? And I've got a big pile of it saved upstairs because it's really useful for this kind of thing, whenever you're doing scenery or boards or anything like that. So conveniently, this one I think is going to be about the right size straight out of the box. But also, I've got some plastic card sheets. So I've got 6 of these, which I bought cheaply online in a packet of them. They're just plain white. They're about A4 in size. I'm going to be using some of this for the base of the scenery, but also various bits and pieces as we go along, so we'll come to that soon. So those are the main things I'm going to be using. I am going to add some extra bits and pieces as we go along. We'll see how it evolves, things like tubes, straws maybe, perhaps some spare bits of kits and things. We'll see how we go. But that's the core stuff, and the first thing that we should do is just set this up to mock up what the scenery is going to look like. So you can see the main thing is going to be the polystyrene used as some sort of plinth with the 2 cans on top of it to be upright tanks. The elbow joint's going to have coming out the side of these to look like they go into the ground for some larger network or something like that. But that's the core main structure. And so now that we know roughly how big it's going to be, we can start by preparing the base. Having the plastic card just say straight on the outer edges makes things look a little bit smaller, so what we want to do is just make it in a regular shape to blend in with the board better. So to do that, I'm going to start out by just drawing a loose line going around the outside using a pen, using that polystyrene block as a bit of reference as to how much space we actually need. Once that's done, with some scissors, I'm just going to cut that shape out, and then I'm going to trace it onto a second piece of plastic card and then cut that out in the same way. The reason for this is I'm going to glue both of them together using super glue to basically create a sort of laminate here. This means it's going to be nice and strong and resistant to warping. And once that's dry, just using my file, I'm just going to bevel the edge ever so slightly, again to help it blend in with the rest of the board. And if you're enjoying this and want to learn more about making scenery, then what you should do is check out DuncanRhodes.com. This is our membership website that's packed full of loads and loads of tutorials covering all sorts of different subjects, including a whole section dedicated to making and painting scenery. We also have another section all about basing your miniatures and loads of other videos besides. In fact, there are well over 500 covering subjects on all your favourite games. Once that filing's done, we now have our complete base. So here it is, nice and sturdy, ready to be built upon. And the first thing for building on it is going to be to tackle that polystyrene block, because that's going to form the main body of the plinth, but really it's going to be a former. And I want to decorate the outside of it using some texture. So I'm going to use some plastic card. We also want to make sure that all the polystyrene itself is completely covered, because when it comes to priming this, spray paint will dissolve the polystyrene, so we need to avoid that happening, of course. So what I'm going to be doing is, again, tracing out some plastic card and sticking it all the way around the outside. And for the outside edges, I thought it'd be cool to add a bit of texture there, so I've got a different plastic card sheet for this one. I have this right here, which you can see has a nice brick texture to it, which I think is going to pick up dry brushing really well. Again, I got this online, but you can also buy it in model shops. It's pretty cheap to get hold of this stuff, and a sheet like this is going to last us for absolutely ages. So the plan for this is to turn it around and then start tracing the shape of the side of the polystyrene onto the back of it. So I'll do one edge at a time. What I'm going to do is hold it up to it and then trace around the outside using my pen once again. Then I'm going to cut this out using my knife and steel rule. And remember, if you're a youngster, be sure to get an adult to do this for you because the blade is of course very sharp. Then this just gets super glued onto the side of it. And I'm going to repeat this for all 4 sides. Now once that's done, I also want to cover the top, but this time I'll go for a smoother texture that we can build upon later. So here I'm going back to my normal white plastic card, and again I'm just going to trace around the outside. And then using my knife and steel ruler, I'm going to carefully cut this out once again. And once that's done, we can then just stick it on top, and there we go. And here we have the fully assembled plinth, all set and ready to go. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, hang on a minute, doesn't super glue start to dissolve some polystyrene? And yes, it does a little bit, but not too much. In this case, though, it was absolutely fine for me to do it for 2 main reasons. But to see what I mean, you can see in some cases it's corroded ever so slightly on the inside just there. Now, there's still plenty of surface contact, so that has glued absolutely fine. But if you are going to have any exposed parts of polystyrene, you might want to use PVA glue instead here. As I mentioned, there are 2 reasons why I didn't. The first is because we need to get the video done, so we need to have quick drying time, so that's why I won't super glue there. But in addition, the polystyrene is completely concealed inside that plastic card. It is only there as a spacer just to hold things up, so it wasn't really that important in this case. But now that's done, what we can do is move on to the next stage, and you can see it fits on the base nicely. On top of this, though, we need to put those 2 Coke cans. Now, what I'm going to be doing for these is filling them with some plaster of Paris, and that's just because these aluminium cans are very thin, they're quite fragile, and they don't want to get damaged during the rigors of battle. So the plan is to fill them to give them a little bit of rigidity. So to use plaster of Paris, what we need to do first of all is measure out a good amount. Now this will change depending on exactly how much you're using here and what you want to fill. Always check out the instructions on the packaging for some guidance here. But what we're going to do is just get some of that powder into an old empty jug with a spout on it. Then I'm going to pour some water into it and keep on mixing it, and the goal here is to get it to the consistency of pancake batter. Once that's done, we're then ready to start pouring it in, and I'm not too concerned about air bubbles here because we're not looking to cast things, we're really just looking to fill out the can. But basically I'm just going to steadily pour this in and then leave it be. Now this will take about 45 minutes to set, and during this it can get quite warm, so what I recommend you do is just safely put it to one side and just leave it until it's set. Ended up leaving both cans for an hour, and so now the plaster's nice and solid inside. So we need to tidy up the top of these 2 cans. To do this, I'm just going to run some super glue around the inside of the top rim, and then it's a matter of just dropping a 50mm round base on the top, and I've just got 2 spare ones here from Citadel Kits. Once that's done, the last thing to do is just rough up the outside using some sandpaper, and this is just to help paint adhere to the outside of the cans. With that done, the 2 cans are now finished and they're ready to be put on the rest of the scenery, which I have mocked back up just here. And they're going to be sat in roughly this position like this, with those pipes going into them, and this one here. Now, having built up all this with this plastic card shelf on here, I've found that it's a little bit higher, meaning that these are, well, they're going to end up sort of rocking and being a little bit loose if I just stick them on as I was planning to. So what I've done is cut out a little plastic card shelf just there, so they're actually going to be fixed down to that. And then on the inside where they meet the can, I have just used a file just to erode a little bit on the inside just there, so they're nice and smooth and stick nicely to the side of the can there like that. I've done that on all of them, including this one on that joint at the top just there. So the next thing that we need to do is glue this together, and after that it's then time to start adding some details on it. For this, what I'm going to be using is some super glue, and I'm just going to gradually work my way through it, starting out with a pipe here and work my way around. So I'm going to do that now. When we come back, we'll start adding some detail. So here we have the piece so far, and you can see it's all coming together nicely, and it is surprisingly heavy, but it's nice and stable, and I'm pretty happy with it at this stage. However, around the back, it is looking a little bit sparse, so we definitely need some stuff here, and also we need something there. And I think actually for a lot of that, what we can do is put a gantry weight on the top here and also add a ladder to it. So to do this, I'm going to start out with a bit of sprue, and I think this was from a Rhino kit. What I've done is just removed all the little nubs and things off it and filed off any text, and this is just going to be glued straight onto the top. Then I've got 2 long lengths of sprue, which again I've cleaned up, and these are just going to be stuck going down to the ground on the flat end I've got down there. This is to form the outer bars of the ladder. Then on top of the walkway, I've got another piece of plastic card with another bit of interesting texture here. This is just going to be glued straight on top. And then finally, I've got some strips of plastic card from that same sheet, and these are just going to be glued onto the two sidebars of the ladder to form the rungs. And now that's done, here we have the scenery with that walkway on top too. And so at this stage, what I think is best to do is to start putting that filler around the base of the piece, because what we want to do is make sure that's got plenty of time to dry. We can leave it overnight, and then after that, we'll just add a few detailing pieces, and it'll be time to start painting it. So what I'm going to be using for this is some filler, and all I'm going to do using a piece of plastic card is just start using it like a scalpel, essentially, to start pasting it onto the base. I'm looking to make it a little bit irregular, but also butting up against the brickwork that we've got there, just so it blends everything together. Now this of course is quite messy, so if you haven't already, definitely be sure to put down something to protect your work surface, and just be sure to give it plenty of time to dry. And here it is with that plaster now dry. The scenery piece is almost at the point where we can start painting it, but before we do so, we should just take a few moments just to decorate it with some bits and pieces from the bits box. Now you should always endeavour to keep a bits box. Basically, whenever you do any kit, any spare pieces left over once you finish building the model, just clip them off and pop them into a box, because at times like this, those spare pieces become really useful because they're great for decorating stuff like this. And I've been through the various bits and pieces we've got here at the studio that have been left over from various videos that we've done, and I've taken some parts from some tanks and I'm going to be gluing them on now. I'm not fully decided exactly yet whereabouts they're going to go, but I do have a few things in mind. It's going to involve things such as this hatch that's a spare one from a Chaos Rhino. Now, it does have a Chaos icon on the top just there, but if I stick the hatch upside down there like that, I think that'll work nicely. I've also got things such as parts from the Havoc launcher, so just here, I reckon I can use these pieces just here. And I've got some from some tanks that appear in the Horus Heresy, such as this little cogitator unit just here. I think that's going to be handy. So what I'm going to do is just have a go at sticking some of these onto the scenery, see how it looks. Then once that's done, we can move on to painting it. So I've been having a lot of fun using bits and pieces like this, and in the end I mostly took parts from a Chaos Rhino kit, just leftovers, but also the Solar Auxilia Lehman Rust that we did a while ago too. And you can see those parts around here. I used autocannon stuck upright just around here, and then these little box things I put on the top to show they're just going into the tanks. I'm also really proud of this around here. I built a little computer terminal. So that is the Havoc launcher just there. On top of it I've got the searchlight, well the back of the searchlight just there, and on the front from that Lehman Rust kit I just stuck on the little computer screen. So we've got that nice little terminal. I think that's really cool. This pipe, I just stuck this on as a spare, which Roger found on the floor. So we just trimmed down, stuck on there. Thought it'd be quite cool when we're painting it to have some goo coming out of it or something. So that's pretty cool. And if we turn a bit further around here, I also have another part taken from that Lehman Rust kit. That is the Vanquisher battle cannon, so the spare that we didn't use. Just stuck that upright, so it's like a chimney with a little aerial thing on it, and also some spare bits and pieces just to blend it in right there. So I'm really happy with that. But right now it does look like a bit of a mishmash of all kinds of things, because it kind of is, you know, it's a can and all sorts of plastic stuck to it. So what we're going to do now is undercoat this to start to bring it all together. My plan is to spray it thoroughly with a black spray to make sure it gets into all the nooks and crannies and provides shading, because after that's dry, I'm going to spray it again, but lighter this time using a dark grey, which I'm going to spray from a sort of downward angle so the black stays in the recesses and gives it some shading. So I'm going to go outside now and do that. When we come back, we'll see how it looks. And here it is, all undercoated and ready to be painted. Our scenic piece representing some sort of Prometheum storage tanks ready for the battlefields of the grimdark far future. Now, as you've seen, making stuff like this is really fun, and I really hope it's perked your interest. Be sure to look around online because there's loads of different things you can see out there for inspiration, but the key thing to take away from this is just to keep your eyes open for any leftover things that are household items that you could use to make scenic pieces like this. Also, of course, just make sure that you keep hold of a bits box of all the parts you don't use when you're building kits, because they come in really handy in situations like this. Now, painting the scenery is going to be an entire subject in itself, so what we'll do is come back to that another day, show you how you can paint something like this from start to finish. But in the meantime, I really hope this has inspired you to have a go at making your own scenery. So have fun, and we'll see you again very soon.